So Max Hovey, thanks so much for joining us. I know you're a mental health influencer. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today. We're looking forward to hearing more about your work and what you do. I guess to kick off, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you began working in media and communications?
So I studied media and communications at university. And whilst I was doing that, my Instagram profile started picking up at the same time. And I've always had, since A-level, a really keen interest in media. So videography, photography, web design, the digital side of creativity, because I can't really draw. So it was a really good way for me to express something with creativity, and it kind of just grew from there. So my whole social media journey has just coincided with my media and communications degree. So that kind of just really supported me getting into the industry, I guess.
It's really exciting. How did it sort of pick up? What was the spark that it sort of ignited on your social media?
Well, I've had a very turbulent social media journey, and I'm very open about that. And my previous usage of social media was very superficial and very focused on selfies and body image.
Okay.
And it was a really negative space for me, and I've had a very unhealthy relationship with social media. I would compare myself to other people quite a lot. And also the images that I was uploading were heavily altered.
Right.
And it got to a point where I kind of realized that how other people were affecting me online in terms of me comparing myself. I was then creating the same problem for other people.
Right.
So my whole profile was basically built around almost like a facade. And looking back on it, it's I wouldn't say I'm ashamed, because that's the person I was at the time. I'm just grateful for the fact I've grown away from that. But I mean, unfortunately, that's how it all started, which is one of the reasons now why I spend so much of my time and dedicate my time to making social media a happier place. Because I know it can be quite a negative place for a lot of people, because I've been there.
Yeah. So it sounds like your experience as a content creator has been quite a roller coaster then, and having a presence online has been, it's interwoven with your personal life and your sense of identity perhaps as well.
Yeah, no, it has. It's definitely been a complete roller coaster. And I used to depend on it quite a lot for validation and my confidence.
Right.
And it was very apparent, wouldn't get enough as many likes, I'd feel down or something like that. And it was just such an unhealthy relationship to have my identity so heavily intertwined with this false persona that was online.
Right. Yeah.
So I definitely say it's a big part of my identity now, but the difference is that I actually had a meeting with my manager yesterday, and one of the things he said to me was, are you happy with what you're putting out there online? Do you feel like you're being authentic? And he basically said, we don't want any of our creators to feel like they're stuck creating content they don't enjoy. And I just said, this is the happiest I've ever been online, because I'm being 100% authentic now. I'm portraying my true self. And I'm very open online now. So I'd say that my identity is very heavily intertwined in my profile, but it's now in a positive way.
Yeah. That now reflects who you are rather than it being led by other forces.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely now led by my actions. Yeah.
That's lovely. That's brilliant. And so what's obviously, the theme of this issue is pride. What's your experience or knowledge of pride growing up? How has that impacted your childhood, your teenage years?
I'd say growing up in my generation so far, we have been very privileged in comparison to previous generations. But growing up, there was still not a great deal of representation of pride. It was still very much the only representation we had in school would be the odd post that said some people are gay and that's fine, and that would be it. It wouldn't ever be spoken about
It wasn't in your classes. There weren't anything like that in your curriculums, or no?
Literally nothing. Like there was no education on it at all, which is why obviously growing up it can be so difficult, and that's the importance of representation. It's not necessarily to make adults feel included, it's so that children and adolescents grow up having these things normalized, so when they either realize that they don't realize that they're different, they just exist, period.
Yeah.
There's none of this, coming out, and that's the importance of representation.
Mm.
So pride for me is like so important, and I think so many people tend to forget how important it is, especially because we have so much more work to do. And you do have a lot of people that say, oh, we don't need pride anymore, we have our rights, which obviously comes from a serious place of privilege, because there are like 71 countries where being queer is still illegal.
Yeah.
So I'd say growing up, I didn't have much representation of pride, but that's kind of why now I do what I do, to kind of bring as much representation to like underrepresented voices as possible.
Do you feel like you've had any role models or anything outside of school and sort of those kind of state parts of society that you were able to draw on growing up, or would you say that that wasn't really something you had at that time?
I definitely say that I did, and that's part of the drive that I have to do what I do, is because one of my biggest like supports online were seeing queer YouTubers giving their coming out stories and talking about their relationships, and even if it was vlogs being like, oh, me and my boyfriend went on holiday and stuff like that, it's kind of that, oh, it is okay, like people have like queer relationships and that's fine. So growing up, that's the representation I got, and it just made me feel more comfortable. So, and these are people that I'm now like actually in touch with now for work. Like I've interviewed a couple of them. I grew up watching Marky Miller and Ethan Heathcote, PK Creedon, and they the main two. And I interviewed PK Creedon, he's a really big queer YouTuber. So to be able to interview like one of my role models that I grew up with was amazing. So that's kind of why I do what I do now, is because I recognize the importance of having these role models online growing up. So I want to be able to provide that to other people.
Yeah, and I guess broaden it out in the sense to have even more role models than you were able to have for you, to make it a much broader experience, I guess, as well.
Yeah, especially because the role models that I followed, although they would still have I don't know how to word it, potentially like occasional feminine attributes, for want of a better phrase, but they were cisgendered men. Like I still identify as a male, and I do appreciate that I am white, so I am definitely on the privileged side of being queer. But I'm aiming to provide a broader spectrum of representation, so experimenting with your gender and your representation and body image, because these are all things that are still problems within the queer community. So although the role models I grew up with were amazing for me on the queer side, they were still kind of like the body ideals, and I'd say slightly more masculine representing. So yeah, like I said, I've kind of gone like that step further to let people know that you don't also have to be this heteronormative white man to be queer. Like there's so much more to our community than that.
Yeah, that's really
not dragging down like these people were amazing for me growing up. And I still think they're amazing people, but I obviously just want to make sure there is still wider representation than that.
Yeah, lovely. I guess, and obviously pride is super important to you. That's very clear from what we were just talking about. I mean, what does pride mean to you? If you could sum it up in a few sentences, what's its impact, its role?
I actually did a video on this a couple of weeks ago, actually, well, not a couple of weeks ago, sometime during Pride Month. And to me, pride is still a protest. So to some people it is, you should go there and it's purely a party. It's an opportunity to get drunk and have fun. For some people they just get to dress up and express themselves however they want. But at the base of it, it is still a protest. We're still going there to show that we're not going to back down. We are here, and it's to provide that representation to the rest of the world as well. If we stop having pride parades, like, we don't know the impact that's going to be having on other nations. Yeah, so to me, pride is still 100% at its core and at its foundation. It's still a protest.
I guess it's sort of not easy to forget, but because of the joyfulness of pride events, it can be easy to lose focus a little bit on the fact that it has got that protest foundation, and like you say, it becomes more of a sort of a celebration, which is also what it should be. But yeah, I can see what you mean, that it's good to remember that roots of it, the protest.
Yeah, especially because it's like the pride previously would have been, you know, a parade to like celebrate being queer and like try and bring about social change. But now even like the parades themselves are predominantly like just businesses promoting themselves.
Right.
So I mean, obviously I don't know like the background. There is obviously going to be, if they're going to be in the parade, they're going to have donated, which is amazing. But it is just obviously streams and streams of businesses, and it's like, it's obviously, some people think that it's kind of lost its authenticity a bit, which to an extent you can agree, but I still think at its core it's super important and it's still very needed.
It's interesting, that link between business and pride, isn't it, of how I guess it's the same with any aspect of life, of that sort of commercialization or commoditization of aspects of life and parts of our identity. It's an interesting one. I wonder what's going to develop in that in the future, and how is there going to be a choice of what businesses, what role they have, what voice they have within pride. Is an interesting one to watch, I guess.
I think it's still very contemporary now, especially with rainbow capitalism. It's been a big talking point this year. I had someone write an article for Happy Smiley about it, actually, just talking about how you have so many businesses that will launch entire collections for pride, and they either donate nothing or they will be like 10% of proceeds are going to charity. And you think, well, you've launched a collection for pride, so in my eyes, if you're donating 10%, you're profiting 90% of the proceeds of a human rights movement. And it doesn't sit well with me. Like, if you're going to create something for something that's, you wouldn't have people for Black Pride creating, and I had this conversation with someone else I interviewed, Tyrese, who is also a person of color, said you wouldn't have someone create merchandise for Black Pride and say, oh, you know, Black Lives Matter, we're donating 10%, but we're profiting another 90%. That's just, it's not okay.
No.
And
Why
I think
there is that strange that there's that perception that it's okay to do that for pride, but when it's no different, sort of in the sense of looking at identity and promoting different aspects of identity, it's no different to any other aspects of identity. So why is it thought to be okay to sort of take pride in that way? I don't know why. It's a strange one. Maybe it is that joy and that celebration. Maybe it gets lost with businesses. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because people, at the end of the day, pride is there to also be enjoyed. So, and businesses are just seeing it as a way to profit off of that, because you want to be able to enjoy, you want to be able to, you know, dress up and really enjoy pride. They do pride has just kind of been commodified, like, quite highly. And that's great, but if what you're creating is giving more than just awareness, because everyone knows that queer people exist. So what you can really do is actually try and bring around some form of social change by donating and helping people in need, rather than just, you know, creating a
t-shirts or something.
Exactly. That's not really doing a great deal.
No, it's an interesting one. You mentioned a couple of the articles or the blog posts that you've got on your Happy Smiley website. So I wanted to sort of dig into that a bit more. Could you explain a bit more about how and why you started Happy Smiley, and maybe also what are the sort of ethics behind it?
Oh, okay. So I originally started it as just like a personal blog. So I started it just writing things I wanted to write, and then it morphed into something called Our Happy Place, which for legal reasons I had to change. And the one thing that kind of triggered it was I had people saying, oh, could you maybe write about this, or could you write about that? And some of the suggestions I had to say, well, I haven't experienced that personally, and I don't know that experience well enough, or I feel relatively privileged in this environment, in this scenario. So I would feel like a hypocrite talking about it. And obviously I don't know everything. I've not been through everything. There are people who've been through so much worse than myself. And I suddenly thought, well, if I'm creating this platform to, you know, share stories, raise awareness, it would be a lot more beneficial to have people be able to share their own stories and give their own expertise. And I then morphed it into Happy Smiley and then said, you know, I'd like to have some guest writers. And it snowballed. Like I think now we've had a total of 57 guest writers and guest written articles, and they've all been really good, really insightful on so many topics that I wouldn't even know where to begin speaking about. And I guess the ethics behind it, it's there to just bring a sense of community. It's there. I want people to either come to the Instagram page or go to the website and just feel like they're represented. I want them to feel go there and feel included. And that's kind of why, like, the whole color scheme is very, you know, rainbow palette. And it's just, I want it to, yeah, it's purely just so people can feel like it's part of like a family, and but they're not alone, I guess.
Yeah. I had a look at the website. It's amazing. It's so nicely designed, and I love all the fact that you've got so many different themes that you're covering. I mean, for people that haven't come across it yet, and hopefully will go and look at it immediately after watching this, what would you say are the themes that you're covering? So plug your website.
So the main things that we tend to cover are sex positivity, body positivity, mental health, and queer topics. So interestingly as well with those topics is that they are like our 4 main pillars, but they all intertwine so easily as well, because there's like unrealistic body standards in the queer community, and queer people statistically have a higher chance of struggling with their mental health. And when you're growing up as a queer person, you have no sex education whatsoever. We have to learn everything from pornography. So kind of having these 4 pillars, but they can so easily morph into one another. And to me, they're just the 4 things that are so important in today's society, but are almost seen as a bit taboo. So it's like bringing all those things together, speaking about them in a not necessarily a light-hearted way, but an untriggering way, and just let people feel a little bit more at ease having seen the content.
What are your plans next? What's your vision for the website and your Insta profile for this?
So I personally have huge plans for Happy Smiley. Like this is my passion project. This is my like full ambition. I want to be able to turn it into something amazing. I want it to be able to be like a brand. I want it to continue to be able to provide this like free, I guess more generalized support, but there's like free support online, and I'd love to be able to launch like product lines and stuff that can kind of coincide with it, whilst having a percentage of all proceeds of anything that's created being donated to charity. So I don't think I would set it up as a charity necessarily. And although that could sound contradictory to what I said about Pride earlier, the difference is that this would be every single product line that is created, portions of the proceeds would automatically go to charity. So the difference there is that we are still a business, but we provide all this free support, etc. Whereas, you know, when companies, they suddenly launch a Pride collection, and it's like they've done that, and that little bit's donated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, your whole ethos, it's rooted in your whole, in Happy Smiley's whole ethos, isn't it? Any products. Yeah.
So there's I don't want to like give any specifics away, because we're still in the very, very early stages of launching anything or going any further, but
very exciting.
Yes, big plans for it. I'm very excited.
I can't wait to see. I have to keep checking and see what's coming on next. The other things I wanted to ask you about, so I know that you also write for a blog for the blog with a section called Max's Mind. Can you tell
Yes.
us a bit more about that? So what are the themes that you focus on in your writing there, and anything else you want to tell us about it?
Okay. Yeah, so we have 3 categories on the blog. So we have interviews, which are all conducted by me. So this is where I interview lots of various public figures and just people that I kind of see as trailblazers. The community where we have our contributors, and then Max's Mind is my own personal bit where any topics that I feel like I really want to talk about, I will then post about. And there, there's been occasions where I've either had an idea in mind and then someone's got in touch and said, oh, I really want to write this. And I've said, amazing, that's something I wanted to write about, go ahead and do it. And vice versa, when someone's got in touch and said, oh, I'd like to talk about this. And I said, I've just written something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like my personal space to write things, especially because I see writing as almost like a bit of therapy for me as well. It's a chance for me to get down my thoughts, speak about like what's bothering me in the world. But I try to be quite pragmatic about what I write. I don't want to write a diary entry where I'm just like, life's shit, this is terrible, period, end of. I like to sort of speak about an experience and then kind of talk about, how I got through it or what I found made it a bit easier. So I guess it's just talking about my own personal experiences and then giving I always like to give maybe 3 or 4 bullet points at the end as to something that can just potentially make it a little bit easier for other people if they're going through something similar.
So something people can learn from and take away some advice for their own life.
Yeah, I want what I write to have value. I don't want it to just be a case of reading my experience I want it to be a case that people can take something away from what I've written.
Okay. And what would you say, I guess we've kind of covered this in lots of ways and we've talked about so far, but in terms of your goals and what you want people to take away from the blog, what would you say in maybe 3 things? What are your key goals for people accessing your blog?
I would say self-acceptance. I really want people to learn to accept themselves for who they are and to not feel the need to adhere to what society says we should do or who we should be or how we should act or how we should look. I want people to come away from it and feel comfortable as who they are. I want people to know that it's okay to struggle. I want people to know that it's okay that if you have mental health battles, know that the difference between realistic positivity and toxic positivity, I want people to know that positivity itself doesn't mean you're always going to be okay. It just knows that when things are getting tough, you can kind of remind yourself, how far you've come and
tools, I guess. It's tools to keep you going.
Just tools to keep you going and just remind people that you've got through bad times before you'll get through them again. So self-love, self-acceptance, mental health acceptance, and just queer awareness, I guess. But that's, I guess it's like I said, it's quite hard to pinpoint 3 because the 4 pillars we have, they intertwine so much. Self-love, mental health acceptance, and just making people smile.
Nice. Have you noticed any differences in maybe requests you've had while all the COVID pandemic stuff has been happening? Have you noticed any differences in issues people are struggling with or want you to talk about and focus on?
I think one of the biggest ones that I've noticed, which has also seen that shift in my own personal content as well, has been body image. There have been so many. Can you hear that?
No.
That's really weird. It's so loud. Sorry. I would say is body image, because it's been, very common throughout the pandemic that gyms have been closed, people have started comfort eating, and people have gained weight. And when, as a society, we attach so much of our self-worth and confidence and validity to the way that we look, that has partly been one of the reasons mental health has been so horrendously affected, because loads of people's bodies have changed. So I guess one of the biggest ones has been for people have kind of wanted me to talk more about body image and just remind people that it's okay if you put on weight, and loads of people have benefited from it, saying, oh, I've gained weight throughout the pandemic, or I've lost muscle mass, etc. And seeing you talk about this makes me feel like it's okay,
Yeah.
because it is.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's been the biggest one during the pandemic.
What about have you noticed anything around people maybe living more with their families, if they've had to go home for a bit with all the lockdowns? Has there been any pick up in those kind of issues that you've noticed?
I don't think we've had anything there really. It's been a lot more to do with body image and I guess productivity, lockdown activities, what you can do to keep yourself busy.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't actually. That's surprising actually, because a lot of people have struggled with that, especially if you've been at university and then suddenly you have to lock down with your family. Like I imagine that must be really, really stressful.
Yeah, especially if the family aren't super supportive. I mean, you'd hope that they would be, but I mean, it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I guess that's potentially why it hasn't come across my desk, so to speak, because I'm fortunate in the fact that I do have a supportive family. So I haven't felt the need to speak about it because I haven't gone through it. But then again, we also haven't had anyone come forward and say, I would like to write this. I mean, if you don't have a supportive family and you've had to move home and be locked inside for a year and a half, I can't even begin to imagine emotionally the impact that could have.
Yeah. I guess bringing that back to Pride, then I guess you'd hope that Pride was a release and a support, and obviously Happy Smiley as well, throughout all that time. If people have been stuck at home, perhaps not feeling themselves, I guess that's great to have your tools there to help them and get them through.
Thank you.
I guess that's kind of all the questions really. I guess the very last takeaway point, do you have anything that you want to say about why you think it's so important to encourage people about these themes? Have you got anything that sort of wrap up thoughts that we haven't talked about already on that?
I think the main reason it's so important to speak about these is because in the mainstream media they're not really spoken about. Especially, Love Island's just come back on, and everyone's body image is the same. Everyone has like a toned body, and when you don't see yourself or what you're going to represented, you're going to feel an outsider, you're going to feel alone. And that's the importance of representation. That's why speaking about these topics are so important, because as soon as someone sees it and think, oh, I go through that. Like, for example, I speak quite openly about my mental health medication, and people go, oh, you know what, I struggle with that side effect, or I've just started taking these. What would you say your advice is? So it's just letting people feel comfortable knowing that they're not alone. And that's why it's so important to speak about these like 4 pillars.
Yeah, and especially at the moment when life is a lot of it is still very online. You guys are your own support network within Happy Smiley, right? I mean, you can't, it's not as easy to go out places still, although maybe it will be in a couple of weeks, but yeah, so I guess it's such an invaluable tool for everybody.
Thank you.
It's been so lovely speaking to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for even like asking me and having me on board. Like, it's an honor.
Oh, well, thanks so much for your time. It's great to learn more about Happy Smiley, and I look forward to keeping an eye on the website to see what's coming up next.
Thank you so much.
All the best for your big plans as well.
Thank you so much.